Hallelujah. We made it. We made it to book 2. We made it. Let's take a moment to dedicate our study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, to dedicate everything, this energy and service, to all life, all creation, all of its expressions for the benefit of one and all. As I looked at the first sutra of book 2, notice the title of book 2. So each of the books, there's 4 books in this gem. The first book is titled Samadhi Pada, which means the book on Samadhi. Hence, there were a lot of sutras about Samadhi. The second book is it's called Sadhana Pada, or the book on spiritual practice. So isn't it interesting that actually in the Samadhi Pada there are many spiritual practices outlined. So just imagine what is going to be in the Sadhana Pada, because then Patanjali already give us plenty of practices in the Samadhi Pada. So we'll see. Swami Venkatesananda, in his commentary, actually, he has a point at the start of book 2. He says, basically, book 2 and book 1 make pretty much all the same points, just different language. So that's interesting, I think. All right, so book 2, the first sutra, I'll tell you these 3 commentaries of the sutras here, they each use several pages for commentary on this first sutra of book 2. So in the same light, I think I will plan to use several sessions on it because it's huge. There's a lot to unpack, a lot to discuss. So the first sutra of Sadhana Pada, the book on Samadhi, accepting pain as help for purification, study of spiritual books, and surrender to the Supreme Being constitutes yoga in practice. How to Know God translation says, austerity, study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's works to God, these are the preliminary steps towards yoga. And Swami Venkatesananda's, the kindling of the inner psychic fire that at once burns away all the impurities and limitations of the mind stuff. And the study both of scriptural texts and one's own reactions to situations from moment to moment, and the meaningful, dynamic, and devotional surrender to the indwelling omnipresence. These 3 simultaneously constitute active yoga, or practice of the indivisible unity. So as you can see there, Swami Venkatesananda clearly stated there, in case you didn't pick up, but these 3, right, these 3 things simultaneously constitute active yoga, or practice of yoga. So, what are the 3? In Sanskrit, tapas, swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. So we've talked about Ishvara Pranidhana before. That was certainly mentioned as a practice that came up in book 1. Very high praise in book 1 for that practice. Tapas is the first word of the sutra, the first word of book 1. I've been with at least one Sanskrit scholar who likes to really point that out, that's the first word, tapas. The very first word of book 2. That's a big word, tapas. What is tapas? So that's what How to Know God translated simply as austerity. That's what this one translated as accepting pain as help for purification. And then that's what Swami Venkatesananda translates as the kindling of the inner psychic fire that at once burns away all the impurities and limitations of the mind stuff. I don't know if that one really goes with the other two. So the way I'm familiar with tapas is very much the austerity or accepting pain as help for purification, or the great way I've heard the teaching put that I love. I'm sure I've mentioned in previous sessions. Adversities are blessings in disguise, and this is huge. And even, I don't know if you've been seeing the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan, but he even talks about the power of positive thinking and how his dad trained him to think positively, and with any negative situation to look for the positive in it. And you can always find the positive if you look for it. It might be obscure, but it's there. There's always a positive, even in death and loss. Dr. David Hawkins, he likes to say, well, you lose a whole head of cattle by morning. Well, I can tell you don't have to get up and milk them at 4 a.m. trudging through the snow and the black and I'm trying to get up and milk this thing. Can't even see what I'm doing. So even with loss, two sides of everything. So we can see the positive in everything, and that's what is the essence of tapas. I think that's one of the broader definitions of it, right? To see the positive in even any pain and suffering, right? Accepting pain as help for purification. If I stub my toe, to be conscious and aware enough that this is an opportunity for learning and growth for me. And I stubbed my toe because I was not presently aware of my surroundings as much as I could have been. So any pain and suffering in our lives, blessing in disguise. Adversities are blessings in disguise. So this is a huge, huge practice, a huge context for life. You can apply this all the time. It's immensely powerful because if you have the fortitude and the vigilance, the willingness to practice this and look at adversities long enough so that you can see them as blessings in disguise and rework them like a Rubik's Cube to reshape everything to get it so the way that you see that, yes, there is a blessing in disguise here. If you can do that, then any adversities in your life reveal themselves as blessings. So then your life is either filled with adversities, transformed into blessings, so then it's filled with blessings, or it's filled with non-adversities, which we might as well call blessings to begin with. So your whole life can be realized as a blessing, because anything that is in the non-blessing category, you can see, you can transform it, because you see that it's an adversity and it's a blessing in disguise. So you look at something long enough, you can see it, you flip it, you recontextualize it. It's very powerful practice. It's immense. It's the first word of book 2. It's essentially a superpower. If I had to pick a superpower, what better superpower than to live with an awareness and a capacity to see the blessing in disguise in any adversity? That is immense, and that essentially guarantees a sense of peace and happiness and faith in life. Because your life, you realize everything's a blessing. What could be better? What could be better? Just the previous story I was telling the other session about the deer and how I scared away that baby deer, and it ended up like jumping down the hill, and I don't know how it might have hurt itself, and that was clearly an adversity in so many ways. And I walked away there thinking originally, it's like, man, I can't tell anyone this story because this just makes me look to be such a bad person. But I realized too, it's a blessing, because it was a huge wake-up call for me to see how any little sense of selfishness, any little sense of greed, even if it's just almost an innocent greed, right? Of just, I want to pet this deer, or I want to be closer to this little baby deer. Like, that's pretty innocent. But to think of the flip side, wow, if I had thought I might, by trying to get close to this deer, it might end up severely getting injured or even like dying from that fall or dying a week later. I mean, I don't know what happened to that thing, but in a way, I could easily be responsible for that deer's death, like based on what happened. It jumped down this hill trying to like run away from me because it was scared, even though I was moving very slowly. I was talking to it for a few minutes anyway, and it seemed like things were fine. And then it just jumps up and down the hill, and I hear this tumbling. It's like, oh no! But blessing in disguise, because that's an immense learning opportunity. And if that moment frees me from future selfish decisions and greedy decisions in my life, imagine if something like that frees me even just from like any greed. It frees me from any greed, or a lot of greed. Like, maybe let's look at it in the long run. Frees me from ever acting greedily again. Would I, or would anyone be willing to give the life of a deer, a baby deer, to free from someone from greed for the rest of their life? And that's obviously a kind of an absurd question to ask, but you think of the immense benefits of that. It's not something I would ever wish to happen again or to relive it or anything like that. But you need to accept it. And to me, it hit me as a huge adversity, and I'm coming to see the blessing of it, even talking about it now, realizing more and more how powerful of an experience that was. And like, wow, if I did potentially, if I am responsible for the life of a baby deer because I was a little greedy and a little selfish, and that wakes me up all the more to how dangerous and destructive greed and selfishness is. And if it can just keep hitting me in the head more and more to get me out of ever acting that way again, I mean, that will pay such eternal dividends. I'm sure I will speak for the deer's behalf here. The deer would rejoice knowing that its life contributed to freeing an individual from greed. And what a noble cause to free someone from greed, because greed is essentially suffering. So to free someone from greed is to free someone from suffering, from the illusion of lack and neediness and scarcity. It's like, no, I don't need to pet this deer. Everything's already abundant. The creation is already perfect and awesome and amazing, and I can just wake up to that and be content with it as it is. And I don't need to change anything. So that's just an example of tapas, accepting pain without causing pain, as accepting pain as help for purification, accepting adversities as blessing in disguise, and to have the patience, the willingness to see the blessing in disguise, to look for it again and again until it reveals itself. So that is just a little bit on the first word of the first sutra of book 2. And I don't even think we're done with it yet. I think we'll have another session or even 2 or 3 on tapas, because it's beautiful. My guess is it comes up again in these sutras. I don't think it's only mentioned once, but we'll see. It is mentioned again, yes. It's one of the, it does come up again. But we'll continue our deep dive in it for now, because the time is now. Of course, by now I mean the next session, because this video session is getting a little long. So let's close. Praise the Lord. Be on the lookout for adversities, stubbing your toe. Look for the blessing. See it. Demand it of yourself to see the blessing in this nonsense, this BS, whatever it is. Look for it with all your heart. Go for it. Don't give up. You're worth it. You don't need to actually suffer the adversities. What you do is you suffer through it. You suffer the patience it takes to see the blessing in disguise, and then you're living in the blessings. So live in those blessings. Look for them. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire creation be blessed with peace and joy, love and light. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. God bless you. Thank you. Om Shanti.